96 test matches, about 5,500 test runs, 17 test hundreds, 3 World Cup wins, and too many Ashes wins for me to go into any details with. So an amazing career, and genuinely one of the all-time greats. So this is sure to be a very interesting half an hour. I just wanted to ask you about your 3 World Cups, and we'll start with your first one in 1999. We've got a few South Africans on the chat, so let's talk about one of the all-time great one-day games, the semi-final. Just to refresh anyone's memory, it was an incredible game. Got to South Africa needing 9 off the final over. Lance Klusener smashes a couple of 4s, 1 run needed off 4 balls. You think it's game over. Darren Lehman misses an easy run-out chance. Game over surely at this point, and then Alan Donald forgets how to run, and Adam, you take off the bails to clinch a place in the final. So basically, just a very vague sort of question, just your memories of that game, the emotions of that climax, and maybe just talk us through the back end of that game. And did you have drinks with the South African lads in the change room afterwards?
Well, first of all, I'll say, Alex, and hello to everyone that's joined now. I always happily take an introduction, Alex, particularly 12 years into retirement. I never assume that everyone knows who I am. It was not that long ago where I was performing a sponsors day in Adelaide. You know, sort of typical, pretty intense days for 3 hours, meet and greet, handshake, selfie, all that, smile, small talk. A pretty exhausting day. And I was in the airport on my way to Melbourne to do a similar type day the next day. And I just needed a bit of chill out time on my own. They say that's healthy, isn't it, to have a little half an hour of your own time every day. So I was sort of having a bit of gilly time, and I sensed this bloke in the bookshop in the airport looking at me, and I glanced at him, I thought, nah, not now, mate. I'm not talking to you now, a bit arrogantly. And then I moved one way, he moved another, I went back, he went back, and then finally he conjured up the courage, came over to me, tapped me on the shoulder, and I put on a big smiley face, game face, said, "G'day, mate." He said, "Oh, are you Glenn McGrath?" So I never assume that anyone knows who I am. I started laughing at the idiot. Not that idiot, this idiot that just thinks that everyone knows who I am and I'm too arrogant to talk to people. I said, "Nah, mate, I'm not," and thinking he would then understand that he got the wrong team member name, and he went, "Oh, bugger," and walked off. And I went, "Oh, right, okay." I am Gilly, but he didn't want to know me. So anyway, I'll take any introduction at all. Yeah, good to be catching up with everyone. Interesting times that we're all in, and it's been really good fun to be able to do a number of these type of catch-ups with a lot of businesses, but it's been great. And Alex, I know you were, I think, on the call that we did with Twickenham Cricket Club over there in London. So to catch up with people that are like-minded, interested in the same things as what I am, it's unreal. And to know that we're all spread all various parts of the world. But yeah, World Cups. I had a very, very fortunate run in World Cups, played in 3 of them, and we happened to win all 3. I don't know that was because I was there, wholly and solely, but probably chipped in at a few different times. But the 99 World Cup, yeah, that semi-final, when I think of the 3 World Cups, I don't know how across detail everyone is about our efforts or the journey that we took in those World Cups, but they were 3 very different journeys. And that 99 one, we came into it, we had a tied series, one-day series in the West Indies. Steve Waugh and Shane Warne were at loggerheads a bit. Warney was sort of plotting a bit to try and push his case to become captain, and Steve had just dropped him from the test team. So there's a few little backroom things going on. It wasn't exactly smooth sailing for the team. We won our first game against the mighty Scotland, and then we lost to New Zealand, and then we lost to Pakistan. And then from that moment on, we couldn't lose another game. If we lost one more game in that process, we were out of the tournament. So it was a fight to get right through, and we scrapped and fought, got ourselves into what was called the Super Six stage, which was sort of the second round of games, second pool stage. And then, of course, at the last game in that pool stage, bearing in mind we had to keep winning, that was the famous one where Herschel Gibbs half took a catch, half didn't take a catch off Steve Waugh. And Steve, of course, got the 100 that got us to victory. Yeah, Jenko's pretty pumped with that. I mean, the amazing thing about that, the night before in the team meeting, not before the semi-final, I'll quickly touch on the semi, Alex, but before the last of that sort of Super Six stage, that the night before Herschel dropped Steve, we're in the team meeting, and we have all a big team meeting, and anyone that's played cricket's probably been in a team meeting, and they can start to get a bit boring and blasé eventually. So Steve says, right, end of meeting, anyone else got anything to say before we play South Africa in what was effectively an elimination match because we just couldn't lose? And Warney goes, yeah, I've got something to say. Says, if you hit a catch to Herschel Gibbs, don't walk. And I actually remember my first reaction thinking, Herschel generally fields at cover or point or mid-wicket. Like, it's pretty tough to claim he didn't hit it if you're hitting a catch to him somewhere in those positions. But we said, what are you on about, Warren? He says he's too cool for school. He tries to get too smart and funky, and he tries to celebrate before he's caught it. And we're all going, right, I can't, right, end of meeting, we all walk out, don't even give that 2 seconds of thought. And then that happens the next day, that exact thing. And do you reckon Warney let us know about it? Oh, God, he's still talking about it now, still carrying on. But, yeah, he in all seriousness, he predicted it the night before. And then, of course, Herschel tries to celebrate a little bit prematurely before he holds the catch. And I don't think Steve Waugh said, mate, you've just dropped the World Cup. I think he said, you've just cost your team the game, which effectively was the World Cup anyway. But we got through that game into the semi-final. The most crazy game ever. The way you described it, Alex, was spot on. Lance Klusener, who is hitting, and this is a long, long time ago. This is many years ago, before T20, but Lance Klusener was striking every game at, a strike rate of 100, 120, which is not ridiculous now, but, 20, 25, 21 years ago, whatever, that's a fair strike rate. So, one run off 4 balls, it's inevitable. We're getting knocked out. But panic set in for the South Africans. A real lack of communication from Alan Donald and Lance Klusener. We let them off one delivery, and then we get this run-out opportunity. And for those that haven't seen it, Damien Fleming gets the ball at the non-striker's end, and all he has to do is get the ball to me over the stumps at the keeper's end. Both batsmen are at the bowler's end, so just get it to me. And rather than throw it overarm, Damien Fleming resorted to the tactics that we used in the team building exercise pre-tournament where we went 10-pin bowling. And he decides to underarm it. And it felt like it took 5 minutes for the ball to get from one end to the other. And I'm just sitting there squatted down, waiting, thinking, and it took so long that your mind can start playing tricks, but just get the ball, bang, picked it up, take the bails off, and we knew straight away it was a tie, but we would progress because we had beaten them in that previous game. So pandemonium breaks out. We're running around, and all I'm thinking is, right, I want to stump as a memento, rip the stumps out. So I run past the team huddle in the middle of the pitch, around them to the far end, rip the stumps out, and it's only then where I think, hang on, I had 3 stumps sitting right in front of me at the keeper's end. But your mind does funny things in panic mode or when it's overcome with emotion and adrenaline. But that was such a fighting, scrapping tournament that we then somehow got into that final at Lords, and I think we almost played the perfect game of cricket in the final, where we bowled first, bowled Pakistan out for 130, 140 and chased them sort of one or two down. So it was almost a perfect performance after a really stuttery, jittery tournament up to that point.
The next few questions I'm going to have here are all about bowlers, much to my disgust. So one of our members, Marius Botha, wants to know who the best and who the worst South African bowlers that you faced.
Best and worst. Best South African bowler. I better start there to allow the back of my mind to think about the bad ones. Best, I think the most challenging for me was Sean Pollock. He was just, as a left-hander, facing his sort of natural inclination to go across the left-hander. So there was no real fear of, I mean, all of us have played cricket, and there's always, when you're facing genuinely fast bowling, there's always a little fear, physical fear element in your mind. But Polly never had that pace to really worry you about that. But there's always a fear of you're just going to nick it and get caught in the slips or in the gully. So he was miserly and ruthless on his line of length. Worst, I'll have to say Neil Mackenzie, who was actually a batsman. But there's a game in South Africa at the Wanderers in a test match where we'd put on a pretty big total, and I was in a pretty decent partnership with Damien Martin. And at the Wanderers in Johannesburg, they had some billboards, big advertising billboards down one side of the ground, on the far side of the ground from the change rooms. And there was a gold company that had a big advertising billboard that basically said, if one of the players hits a six and it hits this sign, we'll give them the equivalent of about 250,000 Aussie dollars in gold. That was a good promo for the company. It got a bit of press exposure, and it was on TV. And we were driving into the ground on the second morning. I was not out overnight. And on the second morning, where you're driving under the ground, you drive under that billboard. And I looked up there and I thought, geez, that's miles away from the centre of the pitch. No one's going to hit it that far. So Marto and I had a pretty big partnership. So Sean Pollock was captain, I think, and he was depleted of ideas what to do. So he threw the ball to Neil Mackenzie just to try and break the partnership. And they were just genuine pies, absolute pies. Some of the worst bowling I've ever seen, particularly at Test cricket level. But I was going to dine out on those pies. There's no doubt about it. I wasn't missing my opportunity. But I slog-swept him. He's bowling these little medium paces. I slog-swept it, and it was going straight at the sign. And I just remember thinking, happy days. Here we go. But then I thought, it's not going to get there. So I'm sort of going, up, get up, get up. And then it flew straight over the top of the sign. Missed it by about a metre over the top. Went past it. And the only thing more interesting than the fact that I was able to hit a ball that far, which sounds a bit self-indulgent, was turning around, looking at my teammates' reaction, where they were shattered. And the funny thing was that they thought they were going to get some of the money, but they were devastated. But anyway, it didn't matter in the end. No sign, no money, no gold, but certainly the worst bowling I'd faced in Test cricket from a South African.
Okay, the next one is from another member, Mo Sattar. He wants to know what it was like facing Wazam Akram and or Shoaib Akhtar in their prime.
Yeah, I was talking about a little bit of physical fear against fast bowlers. That was Shoaib Akhtar. 150 kilometres regularly, upward of that, ended up, I think, at 160 Ks. He was, just quick, just genuinely quick. So I think the beauty of facing Shoaib was then when you faced Wazam seemed like a gentle trundler, a medium pacer, just because of the pace wasn't there. I didn't face Wazam in his absolute prime when he was by way of pace, but I still found Wazam was the most skillful bowler that I faced, certainly by way of seam bowling and swing bowling. Just could move it anywhere he wanted, really. There was one game we were playing in Kenya, of all places, against Pakistan in a one-day tournament. And I faced the first ball of a one-day. The first ball was 4 wides down the leg side. The next ball was 4 wides through about second slip, and then the third ball, or what was the first legal delivery, ripped my middle stump out. So it was almost like he ran out and bowled, and he was sort of just fine-tuning the mind and the computer and getting the radar right, and then when he got it right, it's just unplayable. But Shoaib, fastest bowler I faced. And I suppose, anyone facing bowling that seems a bit intimidating and a bit quick, that's where you got to go back and just trust the training and the preparation that you've done, that you've hopefully done. And it's a bit easier when you're a professional cricketer to prepare more thoroughly than perhaps if you're a club cricketer. But in those big moments, whether it's against one individual bowler or in a World Cup final, a lot of people ask about how do you get prepared for the biggest stage, a World Cup final. That's where your mind just goes back to the training that you've done and the foundation that you've laid. Do you get nervous? Yes, I used to get nervous. But if I could ask myself, have I done the skill, tick off all my skill work, my physical fitness work, dietary, whatever it may be, if I could say yes to all those questions I asked myself, it's amazing how the nerves settled a little bit, and you could then trust that training and allow the muscle memory to kick in and take it on. Because when you're facing Shoaib Akhtar, there's not much time to make your decision about what you're going to do, and there's even less time to change your mind and do something else. So the best place to face him was probably at the other end.
So we'll fast forward 4 years to the 2003 World Cup, Adam, and I know you've been asked about this infinite times, but the semi-final when you edged off, a huge game, a little fine nick, and you walked. I know you talked about this in the Twickenham chat, but just wanted to know, was that did you have time to even think about whether you were going to walk, or was it just an instinct because you've done it all your life? Perhaps what was the reaction like in the changing room, and did you ever think about changing your philosophy to walking and being a non-walker at any stage in your career?
No, I'd never sat down and really analysed it. I didn't have an agenda item that I was trying to, throw out there that the world needed to take notice. I think there's a lot of walkers in cricket. It's just so happened that day happened to be a World Cup semi-final with the cricketing world. The focus was on that match. You described it as a little nick. I thought it was a massive piece, huge. Just chopped it into my pad and it flew straight up. It was so obvious, but the great Rudy Kutchen didn't see it or hear it. But no, I think pretty much I might have explained, Alex, when I spoke to the Twickenham guys. There was a moment in my career when I was about 18 where I was in the Cricket Academy system here in Australia, the Australian Institute of Sport Cricket Academy, playing in a match. So we were all obviously up and comers, and we were playing against Australia ACT Canberra 11, which was a blend of young kids, but a lot of older guys who had sort of been to the city, tried their hand at trying to get into first class cricket, hadn't quite got there, but were really, really, high quality players who were back sort of in regional areas playing. And we were playing against this team, and there was an older leg spinner. He's probably about 38, which when I was 18, that felt to me like he was, a grandfather. But he was rolling his leggies out, very good bowler. I went back to cut one and it got a big edge on it, got caught behind, got given not out. And it was on this wicket that was an absolute road in Canberra, Manuka Oval. And I just thought, I've got, what an opportunity to score runs. And I didn't walk. And I felt horrible from that moment on. But I went on and got 100. And then I went into the change rooms after the game and I saw Bushy, the big leg spinner, the older guy. And I went, and he said, "Oh, well done, mate. Well batted." And I went, "Oh, mate, I'm so sorry about that decision." And he goes, "Oh, don't worry about it." He said, "Obviously means more to you than it does to me." And I don't think he meant that comment as a barbed sort of insult or accusation, but I certainly took it in a manner like that. I personally thinking, yeah, it did mean a lot to me, but sort of at what cost, and why am I feeling that in my gut still? So, and I still don't say that to people and go, if you're a non-walker, you should feel bad. It's each individual up to themselves. And I hear the argument about, what about when you get a bad decision, a bad LBW or whatever, well, they even up. I sort of get that. It's one of the unique things about cricket, but you just got to be comfortable with what you do and the way you do it. Around that time in the World Cup, it was when the third umpire referrals for close catches had just started. And I reckon a lot of players, both in our team and against us, were just starting to take the mickey a bit out of it. They knew that they were out, but they knew technology wasn't going to be quick enough from the cameras, so they would stand there and make the umpires go upstairs. And then we were always very quick to blame umpires for a loss, but we wouldn't, we could bag an umpire out if a bad decision cost us and we'd blow up. But if a bad decision went our way and we won a game, we wouldn't go up to the umpire and say, "Oh, well done, mate. Top work there for giving us that dodgy decision." So we love it one way as professional sportsmen, but we don't cop it too well the other way. So there was a bit going on in my mind, and probably the underlying thing was, there's an opportunity just to help get more decisions correct. I know in theory that's what the DRS is, but I'm not sure it does. But anyway, I thought a little bit of accountability and responsibility by the players wouldn't have hurt, but I wasn't forcing it on anyone. So that's probably how I reacted on that day. Just it always stayed with me, that game when I was 18, and it just so happened to come to the fore in a World Cup. But the most often asked question is not what did your players. Well, the most often asked question is, what did your players say, your teammates? And it's not what they said, it's what they didn't say. So I sat down in the change rooms, and as we all know, most change rooms, I don't know what it's like at Glenmore, but when someone comes in, they've just been dismissed, bit of quiet, bit respectful sort of silence just while they mull over it and put their gear down or throw their gear or smash something with their bat or whatever it may be. But a little bit of respectful quiet, and then slowly sort of murmuring start up again, and then the music might come back on. Not that day. It was deathly silent for ages while I sat there in amongst all my teammates. And I must admit, I started to think, what have I done? And then I thought, no, we'll be cool. Ricky's gone in. Ricky will smash him. And then Ricky gets out. And then next minute, Ricky's sitting next to me, and I'm just thinking, no, don't sit next to me, punter, don't. And then he says to me, didn't you see the umpire give you not out? And I went, yeah, I did. Wrong answer. He didn't want to hear that. That was another about half an hour of silence. And then I got a bit of a spray later on for why I had to form a conscience in the World Cup semi-final. But no, he never pressurised me to change my stance. He just said, each to their own. And same with Steve Waugh. And that's what I would say to anyone, just whatever you're comfortable with and happy with, that's what you got to stay true to. The one thing no one likes is a selective walker, where they pick and choose when they walk, and that's you can't trust them.
We might have a few of those in the club. Southes?
Yeah, I think there's more than just a few of those, Alex, to be honest with them. So but the next question here is from one of our first 11 players, Manav Atri. And he wants to know, how do you deal with the pressure when you go in as an opening batsman in a World Cup final? Like, what do you do to prepare for that? How do you work that?
Yeah, well, in 2007, we're in Barbados, and I mentioned the 3 different World Cups. At 99, we scrapped and fought and just gouged our way into the next round, and then into the semis, and then into the finals, and somehow got the result. 2003 we went through unbeaten, but we had the huge explosion of Shane Warne's drug sample testing positive for a banned substance. We found out the day before the opening match. So that was a bit of a, bombshell going off. And we were challenged a fair bit through that tournament, where we had it, even in the opening game against Pakistan, Andrew Simons pulled us out of the fire, and with 100, and we sort of slowly built our momentum there and ended up with a pretty almost perfect game in the final. 2007, again, sounds self-indulgent, but we just smashed everyone. We just went through undefeated again, and we were just playing such fantastic cricket, mainly on the back of Matthew Hayden going out and scoring 100 every time he batted. I just sort of sat there and watched. But it came to the final. We'd had the perfect tournament. We're in Barbados. We get there. We win the toss. We're going to bat on a beautiful batting pitch, and then it starts to rain. And I remember sort of thinking, geez, I'm nervous. I'm jumpy. I've got to settle down while it's raining. So probably more nervous knowing we were going to bat. Whereas if we hadn't had the toss, you're probably sort of a bit more relaxed until you know what you've got to do. But we literally had the pads on ready to go, and then it started to rain. So there was going to be a delay. I snuck out the back of the change rooms into the gymnasium just to put my head down and just try to close my eyes and not churn up too much energy. And the next thing I heard was our fielding coach come running in, slapping me, going, "Gilly, the umpires are on their way." I'd been asleep for about 45 minutes, and they were literally, umpires were heading out. So that's the way I prepared for that World Cup final. Probably the most relaxed I've ever been. Sound asleep, got up, had no time to even think or get nervous, or just grab my gloves, grab my squash ball, stuff that in my glove, and went out there. And before I knew it, I was facing the first ball from Chaminda Vas. And, that turned out to be a good day for me. But I suppose going back to what I said earlier, the key was, and I think probably why I was able to just clear my mind, was I could trust the work that I'd done. I hadn't had a great tournament in the West Indies up to that point, but I certainly had put in a lot of work, particularly in those conditions. So, yeah, just walking out there, again, asking yourself, like that sort of man in the mirror concept of only you and you know the truth. Have I done the work? Have I done the preparation? Am I ready for this? And if you can go tick, 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 you go, all right, well, now I can just let whatever happens is meant to happen. So just go for it. And it turned out to be a good day for us. So it's just trusting your work and your foundations that you lay.
I was going to ask you about the 2007 World Cup. Maybe if you could just give us I know we're getting a bit tight for time, but a quick little bit of background to the squash ball. And as someone who's been a struggling batsman all my life, how does it feel to be playing on the biggest stage and absolutely smashing them and knowing you're in the zone? It must be quite a nice feeling, I guess.
Yeah. The squash ball. Don't have a bat here. I don't want to bore everyone with fine technical detail, but it's a technical thing. Basically, if I grip the bat and so my top hand, obviously being a left-handed batsman, my top hand was my right hand. If I have too much of my bottom hand, my left hand around the bat grip, particularly those last three fingers, if I gripped it too tight, like most good left-handers, I always tried to shank to the leg side. You've got to go the slog to the leg side as a lefty. But as soon as I gripped too much on the bottom hand, I did tend to drag everything leg side. I found it really challenging to try to hit straight, or at least, and I would say to batsmen, we all say try and play straight. I think probably the key word is to think straight. It's very rarely that, you don't see a lot of straight drives. You see, cover drives through mid-off, mid-on, but you don't see many dead straight. But I think if you're thinking straight, you'll naturally go one way or the other, depending on the line of the ball a little bit. But I just, in those conditions in the West Indies, it was almost subcontinental-like, where they were grassless, sort of dusty wickets. It was always going to be a bit lower and slower. So to play straight, or at least think straight, was going to be crucial. I'd been using the squash. So what the squash ball does, I put it down in the palm of my hand there, and when I grip the bat like that's pen, but it would work as resistance in here. So I literally physically couldn't get those last three fingers around the bat handle. It was only the thumb and forefinger that was sort of guiding it, and then power from the top hand. So that was what a batting coach assessed. My personal batting coach here in Perth, he assessed that a dozen years before this day, And I used to do it in training. You know, we'd tour the world, play everywhere, and then whenever you come back to Perth, it's almost like putting your car in for a service. I'd go and see old Bob. Old Bob had his old, you know, ball machine in his old indoor centre and dark, dusty lights. But I'd go and see him, and he'd just give me an hour working over front foot, back foot, you know, short cuts. And I'd always do about 20 minutes wash ball in there. And as I say, it's like a grease and oil change for the car, just to get everything up and running again, get your technique right, and then off I'd go again, and all the bad habits would creep back in. But I'd been using the squash ball for 10, 12 years in training, but never in a game because it was so uncomfortable. But Bob did say, when you go to the West Indies, you should try it in the matches. And when you get 100 in the final, prove to me you got it in there. So I didn't tell anyone about the squash ball until I got 100 in the final, and then I carried on like an absolute pork chop, trying to show Bob my glove, going, look at that. And of course, then I was accused of using performance-enhancing devices. But I challenge anyone that claims that to try it and see how uncomfortable and awkward it is. But it just, I reckon, if anything, it probably more mentally helped me think straight and feel with that, you know, that little comfort of the ball in my glove, at least allowed my mind to sort of think, okay, I'm going to be playing straighter. I don't particularly think I hit any more deliveries straight that day. I probably still shanked them to the leg side, but it was a pretty good batting track. So that's that's the squash ball. And well, as I mentioned, I faced the first ball from Chaminda Vast that day. Beautiful little left arm, sort of fast medium, swung a bit, came onto the bat like you couldn't have asked for a delivery from a throwdown or a ball machine to be placed better. And I didn't really go aggressively, but I punched it pretty hard straight to mid-off. No run, but I just thought, that is that moment when all of us that have hit a cricket ball absolutely nail it right out of the middle. And for a split second, like you and only you in the whole world know that you have nailed it. And it's a great feeling. And it's a bit like the perfect golf drive, which I'm still searching for, but it's the one that keeps you coming back, and you get a taste of that, and it just keeps you wanting more. So it felt like that day from the very first ball. And fortunately, things went my way, and we got the result.
One of our members, Bijou, he's an IPL fan and has followed you a lot in cricket, and he wants to know about your Gangman celebration after getting that IPL wicket, and what brought that on. How did you get the ball in your hand to start with?
Yeah, well, I can see the RCB shirt there, so I guess that's where the questions come from. But that's not my proudest moment, either on field or off field, to be honest. I'd prefer that YouTube was never around to carry that forward. My kids have taken great pleasure in embarrassing me about that. The Gangnam style was all the celebration modes that were in the IPL that year. Harbhajan, Chris Gale, all the cool dudes were pulling it off beautifully with their celebrations. It was my last IPL match. I looked at the scorecard, scoreboard. Mumbai Indians needed, I think, 48 to win, 9 down. I thought, I reckon I'm in the clear to give myself the green light to have a bowl. So I was captain. Praveen Kumar took the gloves. A bloke that dismissed me so many times, and we'd had some real wrestles with, both in a physical sense of bat and ball and verbal sense. Harbhajan Singh was happened to be on strike, and rest is history. Just a beautifully flighted off spinner, plenty of revs on it, dipped, did him in speed and flight, turn. Truth is, it just went dead straight on. He tried to hit me back into the next state, thinned it, got caught right on the fence, and let the celebrations begin. As I say, horribly embarrassing now. Gets rolled out every year in footage on our TV broadcasts for cricket, but just a bit of fun. So that was what the IPL was all about, wasn't it? Bit of cricket and bit of Bollywood.
I've just had a text from Rebecca Wolstenholme, and she's a Brisbane girl who's living here in Calgary, but her nan is on this call in Brisbane. And Rebecca's asked whether you would be kind enough to give a shout out to Brenda for Mother's Day for tomorrow, perhaps.
Gwenda or Glenda?
Brenda.
Okay, well, hello, happy Mother's Day to all the mums out there tomorrow. Certainly Mother's Day here, and it's one thing where I will be heading in a moment when I finish this call, is go and find an appropriate gift for my lovely wife. But well, hello to everyone. Have a great day. Oh, there she is, right. Hello. Holding the phone up there. Happy Mother's Day, have a great day. Stay safe. Look, it's been, sorry I got to fly off, but Alex, thanks for getting in touch. What I will say, Alex, I might have mentioned to Twickenham, a lot of people ask about being a sports person or ex-sports person, about, challenging times and getting through them. And, I'm sure all the various people on this call have, the whole world over has had the same challenge, really, haven't we? It's quite an extraordinary experience that the entire world is confronted with the same challenge all at once. It's rare times, but remember getting through. We often get asked, how did you get through challenging times, and what was it that pulled you through? Is there any one thing? And I'll just leave you with one thing that I found that I've been able to carry from my playing days into my everyday life, and whatever the challenge may be. And that came from Steve Waugh, legendary Australian cricketer, great mate of mine, top captain. And the Australian cricket team, we couldn't win in India. And I'm sure there's a lot of, I know from looking here, there's a lot of people here with subcontinental background, and it was a challenging place to go and play. We could win everywhere around the world, win at home, but we couldn't win over there. But Steve Waugh felt like it was all in the mind, and we were, it was 30 years that Australian cricket teams couldn't win there. And it was pretty much because we were very quick to blame everyone or everything else for a loss. It wasn't our fault. We were great whingers. And he decided in 2001 we needed to change our mindset of being there, embrace where we were, the foreign conditions and this sort of unfamiliar territory that a lot of us were heading into for the first early times in our career. And he wrote a quote on the board, and it's, I thought it was his quote, but if you Google it, you'll find that the wonderful philosopher Anonymous has claimed it. But wrote a quote on the board, said, "Attitudes are contagious, is yours worth catching?" And I know contagious is a challenging word to throw around at the moment in the current landscape, but attitudes are contagious, is yours worth catching? He decided it was going to be the no whinge tour. We needed to be more positive. We were too quick to blame everything else and whinge about everything. And I reckon it's a brilliant quote that you can ask yourself every day that you wake up, particularly if you're involved in a team environment, be it a sporting club, be it business, be it even family in lockdown. What's your attitude going to be today? Because it's going to have a ripple effect across everyone that you come into contact with. So I reckon that's the one thing that I've carried from my playing days into everyday life. It's tough to stay positive all the time in challenging times, but just ask yourself, what's your attitude going to be? Because how you think, that's how you'll feel emotionally, and then that's how you'll act. So all the best in negotiating this challenging time. I think there's positive signs already that slowly most communities are slowly moving back to what we knew as normal, and there's always going to be a bit of hope at the end. And as I said at the start, for those who are on the call, I've got the shutters shut behind me, but the sun definitely came up here today, and it'll come up tomorrow morning over there in Canada. So thanks for having me, and wish you all the best, particularly if you get some cricket this year.
Yeah, thank you very much, Adam. We, on behalf of everyone on the call and everyone at the club, we appreciate you giving us your time. So thank you very much, and stay well, and hopefully we'll see you in the Combox soon.
Yeah. All right then. No worries, guys. Take
Cheers,
care.
Adam.
Thanks.
Thanks, Gilly.
Bye-bye.